Hey, I'm Lily. I'm working on my debut novel, and I wanted to show a behind the scenes of how I edit my book and all the trials and tribulations that I've been through. I've been working on this book for over a year, so I do have a lot of time and experience with this. I've read a ton of craft books. I've watched a lot of different people's styles and what they do. I have done multiple rewrites. I did a first draft and then I edited that and then I rewrote the entire thing. I did a second draft, I edited that, and then I rewrote the entire thing again. Then I got a third draft and I went through and I did more line level edits and I would kind of change it as I go. So currently I'm in that stage right now, meaning that I've done bigger developmental edits and I've started line level edits, but I'm kind of in the middle still where I'm still working on very big developmental things, but I'm kind of tweaking it at this point. I'm not really focusing on really, really big changes. I'm using Scrivener because it's really good for organizing your chapters and your scenes and everything like that. I have a folder for every chapter and then I have different scenes and I move them around a lot, especially during developmental edits. I'm currently on Act 3, so I am in like the very big climax of everything. And if you follow like the beat structure, like Save the Cat Writes a Novel, I'm kind of in the gathering the team part. And this is really hard because I feel like I have a lot of different characters and a lot going on. So I'm going to kind of talk it through as I go and kind of show you how I'm editing it. So I opened up Scrivener and I am on chapter 33, which is Act 3. So it's the very beginning of Act 3. So my character has already had like their all is lost moment, and now they're kind of having that gathering the team sort of idea where she's realized that she's going to make a change and work towards her goal again. And she has one person that's with her, but they need to gather everyone else that they've lost along the way. And I am currently rewriting most of Act 3 because I've noticed that Act 3 is really complicated and there's a lot going on. So I'm just rewriting it at this point because I feel like it just kind of makes sense. Earlier today, I worked through a lot of different plot issues. And what I do is I feel like for me, pen to paper is a lot easier for me to figure out like plot dynamics than just on an electronic because I think just like intuitively it's easier for me to just do it on paper. I kind of made a list of like characters involved and I kind of like labeled which ones are more important than others to make sure that I am getting the right storylines intact. And I also did some scene layouts where I kind of write down like different bullet points of things I want to happen and then let my brain kind of run wild with all the ideas that I have. I just jot stuff down until it's really messy and I get kind of a general point of what I want to do. Then I go back and then I will make sure that like it's more organized. I'm going to work on a few more notes because the rewrite that I'm doing right now is a little complicated and I want to make sure that everything fits. When I'm doing like plot dynamics on paper, I just ask myself a lot of questions and I kind of just answer them when they come to me. Writer's block is so real, especially because I am not a natural plotter. So anytime I'm trying to plot something before I write it, it's always going to have some resistance there. But just having that will to just keep writing and figuring it out as I go is really helpful. I just did some fast, like intuitive notes to try to figure out what's going on and I'm still lost. I still don't know what's going on. So sometimes at this point, I will just look at Pinterest and I will kind of like get an idea of what's going on by sometimes just looking at images. It helps a lot, really, because I'm able to like see images and then be like, oh, like that's kind of what I was thinking. So I opened up my Pinterest board for this book and I love it. I think it's awesome. And sometimes I'll just kind of like look at these pictures and really just get an idea for what I want to write. Right now, the scene I'm writing involves a cave in the forest. So I literally looked up like Pinterest images of different like majestical caves and it really got me thinking because then it kind of like fits things together that you didn't think were going to work. As someone who's very visual, just looking at a picture of a cave helps me write a scene with a cave in it because then I can kind of get like little visions that come to me and I'll be like, oh, does that work or does that work? I will also listen to music. I have a specific playlist for my books, so I'll put it on whenever I'm feeling writer's block or whenever I'm kind of stuck. I just kind of like to like fuel it out of me. So, yeah. And I'll also light a candle because aesthetic reasons. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to do some writing and see if anything else has come to me. I like to reread the first chapter before to make sure I kind of know what's going on. Something that I've been struggling with is trying to figure out if a character is flat or if they're just a side character because Sometimes I feel like characters aren't given enough light or scenes or enough growth, but I also think that I don't want to focus too much on all the characters. I want to focus more on just a few, but I don't want the side characters to feel flat. So I'm trying to make sure that I can balance that well. I'm seeming to be in a bit of a creative rut right now, so I'm going to take a break and then I'm going to go back to it tomorrow and I'll keep you up to date on how my editing is going. We're back. It's the second day, and I'm continuing to edit my project. Something that I've learned a lot through editing is that I really have to listen to my own intuition. It's something that I've learned through trial and error, where when I first used to edit, I would look at everyone else's process and be like, well, they edit for this, they edit for this. But I feel like intuitively, you know what's best for your story. And even just reading it over and just reading it again and again and again, you're going to pick up on things that you like and you don't like. Thinking less is more, where I'll read through a scene and I could nitpick everything about the scene. But I think just kind of turning my brain off of it and just reading it almost like I would listen to a song or I'd watch a movie and just observe it. I'm noticing big picture things like flow and certain glaring mistakes that are coming out at me. I'll read a sentence and I don't even know if it's like grammatically correct or if it fits that exact spot. If I overthink every sentence too much, I'll get really bogged down with like grammar or like balance of the story. You know, when you're listening to a song and you can tell when something is like off key or like off pitch? That's kind of how I do editing, where I'll read it and then I'll notice something that kind of like sticks out to me. And if I notice that, then I'll go back and try to fix it. But I try not to think too closely about every single word choice because I'm starting to trust what comes out in the original writing. A lot of times I'll just do rewrites, but at the end of the day, like if you just keep rewriting your novel, it's just going to be different. It's not necessarily going to be better. And I'll read it over and then I'll read it over again and I'll change things as I go, but that's helping me a lot with just like that sort of process. Right now I'm working on rewriting this scene, and I like to do sprints when I'm rewriting because I like to get it all on the page and then I'll go back and I'll like kind of like make it neat after. Something that I'm not scared of, but I probably should be, is deleting like whole chapters of my work and just rewriting it and hoping I remember what happens. I don't know what it is, but this idea of like going through and tediously changing like scene by scene is more difficult to me than just rewriting the entire scene. I used to be so scared to like delete a sentence, but now I'm deleting like whole entire drafts because I just rewrote it. I know there's this fear that like you're going to lose a piece of work that like was so perfect for the story, but I think my story is changing so rapidly that anything that I've written in the past, it doesn't like fully connect with the new story. So, yes, it's like terrifying when I just delete a whole chapter or a scene or everything, but I have trust in myself that I'm just going to write a better scene now because I know more of my story than I did when I wrote that. Being able to like aggressively pull apart your story and put it back together is really helpful, at least for me in this circumstance. This is not looking good. I'm hitting like writer's block really bad. I am trying to work the scene together, but I feel like there's too much going on. I feel like it's not making sense. I don't want things in the climax to feel convenient, like, oh, this happened to happen because of this. Like, I want it to feel all tied together, but that's really hard to do. And I'm just looking at my story right now and it's feeling stuck. Push through and put a writing sprint and continue to write and allow myself to write bad and just see what comes up. And hopefully, I get a spark. Or I can get my notebook and I can listen to music and I can kind of intuitively try to write stuff out that comes to me. I can look at Pinterest and look at images and see what comes up. Or I could take a step back and do something else. I'm going to try most of them and see what happens. First, I'm going to do a writing sprint because I do really want to get this done and I really want to get some consistency. I really want to get some progress done. So I'm going to do a writing sprint and I'm going to see if something comes up. And the biggest thing that I've learned is I have to allow myself to write bad. Like I can't judge it too much and be like, "Oh, this is not good," because I'm not going to get over that block. It's going to be harder to get over that block if I'm so focused on how perfect everything is. I like to use my iPad for writing sprints because if I use my phone, then I get distracted and I go on social media. Okay, so update on Writing Sprint. I actually changed my viewing point to this way where you don't have like the background. Whenever I see my story in like a different format, I think I get more ideas coming in. It helps me see it in a fresh perspective. The 15-minute writing sprint, I wrote 553 words and I was kind of bouncing around, honestly. Like I was trying to write a scene and then I had other stuff I wanted to talk about and I kind of played around with like different possibilities that could happen in this scene. I got new ideas. Like when I was writing, I was like, oh, oh, oh. And then I also had images that came to me from Pinterest. In my story, there's like this ancient civilization, and I kept getting images of like ancient temples that have been overgrown with plant life. It caused me to think of a whole different scene that I want to do. I noticed like the climax is something that should be exciting and should be amazing and it should be exciting to write. And the fact that I was feeling this resistance in writing the climax, I feel like there was a sign that something was off because I had that revelation while I was writing. I am going to go to my Pinterest board. I really love like writing sprints. I feel like they're great because if you go into it knowing that no matter what you write, you're not trying to all of the words I wrote are probably not going to make it into my final draft, but just writing down and like playing with ideas. As someone who is a natural discovery writer, it's just way easier for me to do that. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my notebook and I'm going to write down these scene ideas and replot this. And again, something that has been so helpful with me is I'm like, oh, I just wrote like 2,000 words, but it doesn't go with my new idea. As painful as it is to delete 2,000 words, I know that this idea is going to propel me forward to finishing this book. So, that idea of like taking a step back and then so you can do two steps forward. I have a picture from my Pinterest board up, and now I'm going to use it to write these different scene ideas and plot the last bit of my book. So, I kind of wrote some notes down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing act 3 again. No writing is wasted. And even though I'm scrapping these words have helped me get to the point where now I know what I want to write for the story. So that's something that is really powerful. I feel like I broke through that writing block when I'm hitting writer's block or I'm feeling stuck or unmotivated, especially when it comes to the end of the story. There's usually something going on that's not working in the plot. And instead of like getting disheartened, I feel like it gets me like to think like strategically by listening to music and going on Pinterest and doing writing sprints. I feel like it's slowly kind of being channeled to me. So now I can go forward and actually finish this draft and move on to betas, which I'm really excited about. Thank you so much for following along on this editing vlog. I know it's a little chaotic, but I wanted to show the real behind the scenes of my process and how I come up with ideas and how I get through writer's block and get through the editing stage. Thank you so much for watching and happy writing.